Welcome to the Southern Steward Podcast, where we explore stewardship through the lens of our faith and the great outdoors.
All right, welcome back to the Southern Steward Podcast. This is episode 7. It's been a couple months since we spoke to you guys, but we are back at it and hopefully can be a little more consistent this time. Life just kind of got busy and didn't slow down for a while, and hopefully we can at least make a little time, even though it doesn't really slow down still. We can make some time to do this podcast and get it out. But Kyle, how have you been lately?
I've been good, man. It's full-blown summer now. The heat is bearing down. It's been pretty miserable. But you work outside, you kind of sign up for that in South Alabama.
Yeah.
But, yeah, just kids are out of school, a lot of stuff happening, a lot of we got something with the youth like every weekend, the youth group, so we're doing that every Saturday. But, hey, life's great. It's a good time. Everybody's happy. We're good.
Yeah, it is. Like the things that we're doing, the things I've been doing at least, it's not things that I don't enjoy necessarily.
Right.
It's just always something to do. So, but yeah, we're going to get back at it. There's a lot that you guys, I guess, missed unless you're involved here at Bayou Sara. We've had some events go on, some good, some challenges, but we had a wild game supper at the end of April. I think we told you guys about that last episode, and we had a gun raffle that we did to raise money to help pay for that wild game supper. And we just want to thank you guys for buying tickets. Everyone that bought tickets, we appreciate it. The winner was Gary Clancy. Gary won.
Local Saraland guy.
Yep. Came
with a group from Redemption Church, and thank y'all, man. It was an absolute success. The raffle, again, all the money from those tickets was put straight into men's ministry here at Bayou Sara, and it goes to future events or to outreach or however we see fit to use it. But it'll all be for ministry. So a huge success. I think we were real close to $3,500 on that gun worth of raffle tickets, which is just awesome, man.
Yeah.
Thank y'all so much. That was cool.
It was. For those of you that don't know, I got sick the morning of the wild game supper. So after, Kyle did most of the work.
Well, let's not. There was a lot of other people there, so don't feel slighted. Tyler Pridgeon, Jason.
Yeah, for sure.
Everybody pulled weight.
Out of the two of us, out of the work that the two of us did.
Well, you certainly let me down, but everybody else picked up your slack, so it was all right.
I heard you were busy that day. So.
I actually won the cook-off. I won the wild game cook-off.
I
won the belt this year with my wild turkey breast rolled. Let's see, it was wild turkey breast stuffed with asparagus and cheese wrapped in bacon and smoked. It was delicious.
I didn't even get to try it.
Yep. I think it was the kind of the all factor that got me the win, though. Like, people just couldn't believe that I gave up my turkey breast for that.
That is a good point.
Yeah.
That's a big sacrifice.
Hey, you do what it takes to win, Do what it takes to win.
So you got a belt now.
Yeah, I got it. Well, Cooper has a belt.
Okay.
It automatically went to Cooper's room, and he was like, "Oh, this is my wrestling belt." Sure, man, you got it. The thing is, it weighs like 10 pounds.
I have the chili cook-off when I won it a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I keep it in my office, like at work. A lot of people ask about it.
I should be a little more reverent about my award, I guess. I don't have an office, though.
I keep it up on as a bookshelf, and I have it up on top of the bookshelf, and people ask about it. So I get to tell them about the Bayou Sara chili cook-off, and
yeah. Well,
maybe they'll come to the chili cook-off, the fall festival.
Maybe so.
I was working last year. I couldn't even compete, so I couldn't defend my title.
Can't remember who won that last year.
I don't know.
Well, anyway, Wild Game Supper was a huge success as well. Had better than 250 men here. Gave away a ton of stuff, which again was all money from donations for the most part. And we had PJ Weeks come and speak, and he did a phenomenal job. And we'll plug that again. We hope to have PJ on the podcast one day to kind of talk about what he's doing with Rain Down Ministries. But man, I want to challenge y'all or encourage y'all to go look up Rain Down Ministries. They have they're based out of Laurel, Mississippi, but they also have a chapter, I guess you'd call it, in Alabama, in the northern part of Alabama, up around Birmingham. But anyway, they do some really cool stuff, and it's all based on ministry to kids and they may not have the opportunity to be exposed to the outdoors or whatever. So it's a cool thing. Y'all check him out. PJ's a great guy, and like I said, I hope we can get him on here one day. But yeah, just thank y'all for making that event such a good thing, such a I don't know,
a blessing.
Yeah, right. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of the what I hated about missing the most was I mean, of course, you got like $2,500 worth of door prizes. I might could have won something. That would have been nice. But honestly, like missing PJ speak, is one of the biggest, I guess, I don't know if regrets is the right word, because it's not like I had a choice. I was throwing up all morning. So
yeah, we didn't want you there.
Yeah, nobody wanted me here, and I didn't feel like being here anyway at that point. But yeah, I really hate I missed PJ and just the whole gathering, really, just to kind of come together. And
Isaac Itza, the youngest Itza boy at church here, he's the one that won the gift card,
which I heard he likes fishing, so that's cool.
Yeah, man. Apparently, the Itza kids are enamored with sunfish. That's their thing.
Really?
Yeah, and they got a list. Like they're trying. You know how Alabama has like all these species of sunfish? Well, they're knocking them off, and they're fired up about it. Yeah,
that's
it's wild.
Cool.
So he told me this past weekend we were at the beach, and he told me him and his brother Nate brought a cast net, and they were throwing it around the beach, just catching all these fish and checking them out. And they're all genius. The Itza family is just every one of them is way smarter than us. So they're catching all these little fish at the Gulf and naming them because they know exactly what they are. And so I asked him about the gift card, and he's like, "Well, I spent like $300 of it already on various things, but he bought each of his brothers a fishing pole with it, or a new rod and reel." And he said, "I'm saving the rest." They have family in Arkansas, and they're going like in a couple of weeks to Arkansas, up around the I think it's White River in Arkansas. Pretty sure. Anyway, they're going up there, which is like big fly fishing. He said, "I'm going to go to the Bass Pro up there where they have all the fly fishing stuff." He said I was going to spend the rest of it up there, so he was going to try to do that.
That's pretty cool.
I was inspired by that, man.
Yeah.
Little Itza's fired up about catching some sunfish. Man, he was James had asked him what his favorite species or what his favorite sunfish was, and he like spouted off the scientific name for it too. I mean, he was fired up about it.
Yeah, commonly known as.
Right. And I was like, "Oh, you mean like goggle eye or something?" I was just like, well, anyway. But yeah, anyway, more power to you, Isaac. That's great.
That's cool.
But in other words, in other news, we've tonight we're gonna do it a little different. We don't have a guest tonight. Me and Will just kind of decided we were going to get back in the groove and just do some catching up. Talk about, it's been over 2 months since we put out an episode, so we were just going to catch up a little bit, and then we're going to have a devotion at the end. So, Will, update us a little bit on the fishing world and what's been going on.
So, as a lot of you know, if you listened to the last episode at least, we had the opportunity to go fish in the Fishers of Men National Championship in South Carolina at Lake Murray. It's just west of Columbia, and it's if you put together a top 5 lake list in the United States of America as far as bass fishing goes, it would probably make everybody's top 5. But yeah, so we fished the national championship there. We were there for a week. Get there on a Saturday, and you practice, 1, 2, 3, 4. You got 4 days of practice, and then tournament starts on Thursday, and you have Thursday, Friday, and then if you make the cut, the top 40 cut, then actually it was 39. The top 39 fish on Saturday for all the marbles. But it's cumulative weight, so your weight goes with you as you move through the days. But yeah, so we got up there, and the lake's a lot different than what we're used to here. It's very deep on the bottom end. It's kind of like on the bottom end is kind of like Lake Martin a little bit, but Lake Martin with more grass. And so it's similar but different, and it's a herring lake, so the fish act a lot different on it as well. And all that is very new to us. I've fished one herring lake before, and that's Lake Hartwell, which is in South Carolina.
What's that mean?
A herring is a type of bait fish.
Okay, yeah.
It's like crack cocaine to bass.
Right. I know what a herring is. I just didn't know that's what you were referencing. Okay.
So the blue herring, the blueback herring, it was not put in there by the state. it's one of those deals where some guys went and put a bunch in there, and the state will probably tell you that they'll destroy the fishery or whatever. But basically,
feeds them really good.
From the time they put the herring in there, it changes the way the bass act. They're going offshore chasing herring. Once you put them in there, like they may be related to grass mostly, which I think was the old Lake Murray, as they were like a grass fishery kind of thing up shallow on the banks in the grass. And once the herring got put in there and got established, it turned into a herring fishery. So now they're offshore, long points and that sort of thing, chasing herring. I think it was Hank Parker talking about herring one time. I heard he said that he knew a guy that had like a big tank with a big like 5 or 6 pound bass in it, and he had different kind of like bait fish and maybe even like a crawfish, but he was throwing different baits in there, like actual bait fish, trying to feed it. It wouldn't eat anything, and he said he dropped a herring in there, and that thing came alive, and just aggressively went and ate that herring.
You may not know this, but how long does it take to change a lake with something like that?
I think it's almost immediate from what they say.
Really?
From what they say, like as soon as like the bass find out that they're there, it changes it quickly.
That's wild.
I don't think it's over like
Think
a 10-year
about what
period.
other scenario, like what landscape changes would have to happen to make deer pattern change so drastically that
clear cut.
Well, I guess maybe if you look at, I didn't think about that.
That's going to change them.
That's right. Okay. Yeah, I didn't think about that, but you're right. But
it completely, like I said, it changed the game.
It doesn't change. You're still climbing a tree and
looking. Well, it would almost be like if you brought in, if you had somewhere that deer had never seen a soybean or something,
okay.
Maybe, I guess, in that regard, and
yeah.
all of a sudden you go plant 1,000 acres of soybean somewhere.
Okay. That's a good point. But I've never eaten, 36 years of life, I've never heard of a herring lake before. I've never heard that referenced before.
Yeah, so there's a lot in the Carolinas. I think there's herring in Lake Martin, I'm pretty sure, but
Does South Carolina have Santee Cooper too? Is that where Santee Cooper is?
Yep.
So they got Santee Cooper and
Murray.
And
see, I don't know if they're in Santee Cooper or not.
Well, I just meant like that's 2 big lakes, big fishing lakes.
Well,
in
and
South
Lake
Carolina.
Hartwell's on the Georgia and South Carolina border. That's another one.
And those are like big 3 fishing lake. Okay.
I think there's a couple more on the Hartwell chain too that are decent size, but yeah, there's a lot of fishing in South Carolina.
Yeah.
And North Carolina's got some too, but yeah, there's herring in a lot of those lakes, and like I said, it just changes the way the fish act a lot. But because of that, we tried to do the South End stuff because we knew it's going to be one on down there. Like if you do enough research, you know about where the tournament's going to be won. So we knew it's going to be one down there on the lower half of the lake. Somebody's going to find either a herring spawn, or they're going to be sight fishing or a mixture of both. Like we kind of knew that going into the tournament, and so. Practice down there. We couldn't really get on anything offshore. It was just not very good. And so we found a few males moving up on the bed. And so we kind of, logged that in our memory and marked all those beds. They were just starting to move up though. And so we did that. And then like one of the last days of practice, we went way on up the river where it turns into more of the stuff that we fish down here. It's like I don't think the herring like it up there as much on the upper end of the lake. And so those fish act more like what they probably used to act like on the south end. But how they act here, they're relating to grass, and there's threadfin shad up there and stuff. And so they're eating the normal things, I guess you'd say.
Right.
So we went up that way and tried to find something that we knew how to do. And we ended up finding a little spot. It wasn't very big, but it was a shad spawn going on in there. And it wasn't much of a shad spawn, but it was enough. And I caught like a 4.5 in practice, and then I had another one blow up on a frog, and I shook him off. And so I was like, okay, well, there's quality in here, So I said, well, we'll just go start up there. And so we went up there. The first 2 days of the tournament, we started our morning up there. And out of that one hole, I'm trying to remember because it's been a long time now, but out of that one hole there, and I mean, where we was fishing, basically you could relate it to like probably like a 15, 20 acre lake, that probably smaller than that on it. The fishable portion of it though, like the place that we actually fished was probably more like a 10 acre lake.
Wow.
As far as size goes, but I caught a 6, a 5, counting practice 3 4s, and then like a 3.5 and a 2 out of there.
It's pretty good.
in 2 days
Yeah.
of the tournament. So yeah, they were there. Like,
Right.
but it wasn't like you couldn't go on the first pass and catch them. You might could, but a lot of times it'd be the second, third time we come through there. There's just a lot of grass in there and stuff, and like I said, there's a shad spawn going on. I think kind of what we caught was a lot of pre-spawn females just kind of moseying around through the grass, eating shad, waiting on their time to go up and lay eggs. Because the males make the beds first, and then the females mosey around nearby until they're ready to lay out, and then they'll come up there and lay out on the bed. And I actually caught one of the females, one of the 4-pounders I caught off the bed. There was a spot behind the grass that was clean. That's generally where they like to actually bed, is in the clean area behind the grass. But there was a stump there, and we had seen a swirl. When we were in there in practice, I saw a swirl there. I threw over it, didn't get nothing. First day of the tournament, I saw a swirl there. I threw frog, buzz baited, threw plastics through there, couldn't get nothing. Like a Texas rig, couldn't get anything. And then I saw it the second day of the tournament. And the second day, I think I'd caught a 6. So we had like a 6-pounder. So we needed we get another good fish or two, we're okay. And we could tell, like, the fish, like, we were starting to beat that place to death. Like, it wasn't many fish left.
Right.
But I had seen a swirl again. That's like 3 days in a row. I'm like, that's a bass. Like, it's a bass. Same spot, 3 days in a row. They're bedding. That's a bass on bed. I don't know what it's going to bite. But I thought about it, and I had a wacky rig rigged up. It's just a weightless Senko hooked in the side, basically, in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
Right, hooked in the middle. So I have a wacky rig rigged up, and I'm not a wacky rig person. Like, I've thrown it here some, but normally I catch dinks. And that's why I always tell people, like, I hate a wacky rig because I'm like a 2-pounder is the best thing I ever catch on it. But I had that wacky rig for bed fishing, and so I was like, I picked that wacky rig up, I flipped it in there, and it landed, and I let it sink. And then all of a sudden my line picks up and heads to the left. And I set into her, and it was a 4-pounder. And I was bringing her through the grass and everything. It was a whole ordeal, but we got her in the boat. And that's like the one good fish I've ever caught on a wacky rig.
Well.
And I just, like, I was almost just going to keep going, but I tossed that wacky rig in there, and I had pulled that frog over like 5 times, and a buzz bait and everything else. And the wacky rig got the job done. So we had like a 6 and a 4 coming out of there on the second day. But we ended up with 16 and change the first 2 days. So I think after day 1, we were in like, I can't remember if we were in like 50th something or 40th, 50th. And there's like 175, 200 boats in it.
I'm trying to remember. I remember you being...
Or it's almost 200. It's like 195, I think.
Yeah. I remember you being real close to the cut one day, and y'all pulled it out.
So so after day 1, I think we were like 54th. And then after day 2, we brought in 16 again. Normally, if you could, like, be consistent, you're going to improve.
Right.
So, like, if you're 50th on the first day, you bring in the same weight on the second day, you're going to be higher. And then same thing on the third day, you bring the same weight, you're going to move again. So after day 1, we was like I said, 50th or something in there. And then, after day 2 is when they make the cut. Well, we bring in 16 and some change. We actually, like I said, we caught a 6 and a 4 in that hole, and it was kind of over with. So we left and went and sight fished back down south. We ran back down, and I say south, about mid-lake. We ran back down mid-lake to where those beds we saw, and we ended up catching a few fish off a bed. And so that, like I said, that got us to 16 something. And
feeling pretty good about it.
Yeah, I mean, for like being on a lake we've never seen before, a herring lake, which we're not accustomed to fishing. And, we've brought in 16 both days. And at the time we weighed in, we're like 32nd or something, and 39 is the cut. So we're like, even if we don't make the cut, like, I feel like we've done as good as we could do here,
right.
And so we get, like, people's weighing in, and we're like slowly kind of popping down a little bit, and it ends up being like the last person weighs in. We're in 39th. We are the cut right now. The last person weighs in, and it bumps us to 40th out of the cut, and we're like, well, I guess we'll go home. You can fish this. They have a tournament at state. It starts later in the day, like an hour later after the regular blast off on day 3. It's called the Redemption Tournament, and it's a little bit of payout, but like first place is like $500. It ain't much.
Right.
But like the Redemption Tournament takes off like an after the normal, whoever makes the cut, and then it weighs in like an hour early, just to get them out of the way.
Right.
But they can, you don't travel that far. You can fish an extra day if you want to.
Mm-hmm.
But we was like, we both got kids at home. We're just going to head back to the house, basically.
Right.
And so, like, we're telling everybody bye. Like, we're telling everyone bye. And there's a guy in our division that fishes in our division. We had, I think, five or six teams out of our division made it, which is really good for especially a smaller division like Alabama South is. But we, we're telling everybody bye, and a guy named Nathan was up there looking at the leaderboard, and he calls my name. He said, "Hey, come here for a minute." And I could tell he sounded kind of serious. I'm like, "What's he wanting to show me?" And I woke up there. He's like, "Y'all are 39th." He's like, "Cause we just bumped up from like, they were like in 29th or something and moved to 28th or something like that, And he's like, "Y'all just bumped up to 39th." Well, come to find out, somebody had a dead fish. And so you get penalized if you have dead fish in tournaments. And so, but the dead fish penalty on the leaderboard hadn't taken effect until they hit close on the weigh-in. So once weigh-in, they say the scales are closed, they're officially closed. That's when all the totals rearrange, basically.
Yeah.
And so it put us up.
What a roller coaster.
It dropped somebody. Yeah, like we're heading home.
Right.
And another thing is, if you're 40th, you go home with $0.
Right.
If you're 39th, you go home with $1,000.
Dang.
So this is $1,000 difference right here.
That's a big swing.
So somebody got popped out from a dead fish.
Yeah.
And
that's tough.
Yeah. I mean, I feel bad for him. I really do. But
because at a certain point, there's not, you can do your best, but it happens. They die.
At the end of the day, like, you're responsible for your fish care, and there's things you can do to be much better. Like
Mountain Dew.
I keep Mountain Dew in the boat. As soon as I say this, next tournament I'm going to have 5 dead fish probably in my live well. But very rarely do I have a dead fish. And yeah, Mountain Dew is one of them, man. I'm telling you, like, if you have a bleeding fish,
that's incredible.
If you hook it in the tongue, and we had one we did this with. If you hook it in the tongue, because it bleeds like crazy, you hook them in the tongue.
Mm-hmm.
I had one the other day I hooked actually in a tournament in the tongue and messed up part of his gill. I took that Mountain Dew and just poured it both sides in the mouth, and then turned him upside down and poured it through his gill in the gill plate. And you throw that joker in there, he'll be just fine.
Tickled his innards, man.
I'm telling you, man, it works.
Well, do you know science behind that?
I think from my understanding, I think it's the sugar in the drink.
So it could coagulates. It could be any soda, probably.
Yeah, but I get Mountain Dew because it's really high sugar.
Okay, yeah.
And so I think it just coagulates the blood and stops the bleeding. I think that's how.
But it works for sure.
Oh, it works 100%. Like if I hook 2 fish in the tongue and put them in the live well, put Mountain Dew on this one and no Mountain Dew on that one, I'm very confident that one will be dead at the end of the day. And Mountain Dew is not 100%, but like if that fish dies and you pour Mountain Dew, it was bad. Like it was gonna die regardless. But yeah, like my fish are normally very healthy when I pull them out of there. Like I make sure I keep fresh water in, and that's kind of part of the thing too. Nobody thinks about, but
Anyway, the next day tournament.
So day 3, we're like, we've got $1,000 in our pocket.
Yeah.
If we don't catch a single fish today,
go from 0 to 1,000 on a technicality. That's
I
wild.
know. It was like I was like. It was a roller coaster for sure. But, we have $1,000 in our pocket. So I'm like, and looking at the payouts, like they really don't start getting much bigger until you get on up there.
Yeah.
So I'm like, we got to make a big jump.
Mm-hmm.
And so I knew, I'm like, the chances of us catching fish that's going to make us jump back in our hole that we beat to death for 2 days now.
It's probably over with.
We'll probably catch, there'll probably another big one we'd catch in there, but probably one, And so I'm like, we need more than one big one. Like we need 3 or 4 at least, and then a good keeper fish. So like we gotta go on the south end down here and do something. This is where the big fish live. We got to come down here and do something to jump up. And make some more money basically, and have some fun. I'd love to go catch 25 pounds out here, but so that's what we did. And we went and on the south end of water we had never seen. We looked at a map the night before and said these look good, and we started on a point I've never seen my own eyes until we pulled in there.
Bold strategy, Cotton.
Yep, and I caught a big striper in there, but I also caught a 3.5 pounder on
Nice.
on that first one, so it was a good call.
Yeah.
But yeah, we caught. So I caught one on a point, like 3.5 pounds, and then we went to another point. I caught another one like 3.5 pounds, and so we had like 9 pounds, or not 9 pounds. We had 7 pounds on 2 fish. So he's like, it's a decent start. But we still need some big ones, and so we fished a couple more points and didn't really catch much. And then we said, let's go to the bank, see if we can see some on bed. There might be some big ones on bed, and so we found some small ones on bed and. Caught a couple small ones, and then we went around this one little island. I actually fished the point coming off the island, and then Kirk, my fishing partner, he was like, it was kind of a shallow spot. It was kind of interesting. It was an island, but there was like a 6 inches deep saddle between it and the bank, right?
Yeah. Okay.
So when the water's down, it's a peninsula,
right?
Mm-hmm. But the water's full pool, it's the island by a little bit.
Right.
And so it was real sandy back there. He was like, why don't we go back there and look for some bedding fish? I was like, yeah, okay, And so I started trolling back there, and like on the way back there, right up against the island, as we get close to that little saddle, it's real sandy. I see a couple cruisers, like 3 pounds. But, normally when you're sight fishing, you want them to kind of be locked on basically like a 4x4 area or smaller.
Right.
They're easier to catch when they're locked like that.
Yeah.
On one spot. But this was like 20, 30 feet, just big circles. It's really hard to catch. So we're like, I don't think we're going to waste our time with this one. Saw another one doing the same thing, and they were decent looking fish. They looked to be about 3 pounds, And so we moved on from those two. Well, finally we get to a place, and it's 2 within like sight of each other. Like I'm looking at one here and there's another one over here, and both of them are 3 or better, we can tell. And they're just locked down. And so I put the power poles down, and we went to just flipping at them. And finally, we agitated the first one enough and caught him. And I'm trying to remember what that one was. That one was 3 or better. Went to the next one. Didn't take long with that one. Caught her or him. These were big males is what they were, but caught him. He was like 3.5. And then we went back to one of the ones that we had tried to catch earlier. And he had actually went from within an hour, or it was less than an hour, he had actually went from big circles to now he was kind of locked down. So we flipped in there and caught him, and he was like 3.5. So essentially we had like 5 3.5 pounders is what we had for the most part. I think one of them may have been 3.25, but we ended up with 16 and some change again. We fished some more spots like offshore trying to catch another big one, but I mean we couldn't really find any super big fish, but it was a solid bag again, 16 pounds. And so it jumped us to, I want to say 32nd is where we finished, catching 16 again. So, we were happy with it, going to a lake we've never seen before, and it's outside of the normal fishing strategies and techniques for us. And, we pulled 16 pounds a day and finished 32nd out of 195.
And a lot of those guys
best
probably,
fishermen in the country.
And probably a lot of them being in the area are relatively local also.
Yeah. I mean, if you looked at the results, like especially the top 10, that's a lot of South Carolina guys.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think I looked at like the top 5, and all but like one team was within like an hour's drive of the lake.
I mean,
which makes sense.
Not really you can do.
No, I mean,
anything you can do against that.
You're gonna run into that every year, but like I said, that's our second. We've been fishing this for 3 or 4 years, and this is our second national championship to make. And first national championship, we didn't do well at all. We had a decent practice and just didn't really culminate to anything tournament day. But like I said, we went to a lake we've never seen before, and outside of the locals, we beat a lot of good fishermen from around the country. So we were pretty proud of it. But anyway, so we kind of come back from that, happy with our performance, and then kind of started right into we were already a tournament or 2 into our spring season of tournaments, but we started into the back half of those. And I've cut a few checks this year, but man, it's kind of been, I don't know, it's just been a weird year. I don't feel like I'm catching any big fish. I'm catching just a few decent ones here and there, and I think a lot of it has to do with the river's just messed up. It's just been fishing weird, whether it's bass or crappie or whatever. It's just been a really weird year fishing wise. because both, I mean, any river, whether you're talking about the Alabama or the Tom Bigby or whatever, or the Mobile, you know, because those two feed them, you know, but the Delta, everything has just been flooded, seems like most of the year, ever since like January, February.
Yep.
It's been up. And I don't know, maybe in the next week or two it'll come down, but
I wouldn't count on it. It's been,
I don't know.
it's been a lot of rain lately.
It has.
Well, tell them about your catastrophe.
Oh, yeah. So I had a really rough couple weeks. The Memorial Day weekend to the next weekend, but Memorial Day weekend, I fished a tournament on Saturday, and I think we cut a check, but it was like we didn't have a whole lot of weight. It was in what I would call pitiful. Like I said, we did cut a check, but for that time of year, it was pitiful bag.
That was Miller's Ferry.
Yeah. And
something you would expect to do pretty well on, since it's kind of your home ground.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I was kind of disappointed with that. But on Monday, I went to fish just some new water to see what was going on a different part of the lake there. And I saw, like, up ahead, I saw white birds, which in May means there's a shad spawn there. And so I saw some white birds. I was like, okay, there's a shad spawn. I'm going to go check that out. So I turned my trolling motor on high and take off. And I thought where this is at, it's like, it's fairly shallow, a good bit out from the bank, but there's not like stumps. If there's any wood there, it's stuff that's floated in there. And so, like, I turn it on high and I take off, and I'm going and going and going, and all of a sudden I find something underwater. And apparently it was just the right depth that my trolling motor normally it'll bend and then kind of throw you back. Well, it bent and then kind of went up on top of it. I think it's a log. I side imaged it. It looked like a log, but it went on top of the log, and the weight of the boat came down, and so it shattered my...
Exploded.
Yeah, it exploded my my trolling motor shaft. And so, and if I remember, I'll post a picture with this episode of my trolling motor shaft if y'all would like to see that, what an exploded trolling motor shaft looks like.
It's just carbon, right? And then, like,
yeah, it's like
fiberglass, whatever.
Yeah, and
you know what
it'll cut you
fiberglass
too,
looks
man.
when
It's
it
really
breaks. Just stuff everywhere.
Mm-hmm. So
expensive mistake.
It was, thankfully I didn't have to replace the lower unit part, because sometimes when it breaks, water gets in there, because the shaft is hollow and your cables go through it. Sometimes water gets in there and it gets into that lower unit and messes it up. Thankfully, apparently that didn't happen with me. So yeah, I took it over to Waymakers there in Chickasaw, and Matt got with Garmin and all and took a look at it, changed my shaft out. It solved the issue. So much cheaper solution than buying a new trolling motor or a new lower unit for the trolling motor.
No doubt.
Saved me some money there. But yeah, so I exploded. That was one weekend. I exploded it, and I was telling some people a story. So I'm gonna tell you about my terrible time, and then I'm gonna get a little bit serious. I'm not gonna take your devotion, but I'll get a little bit serious about it.
All right.
So I had that happen on Memorial Day. Then the following weekend, I had another tournament. Right, the one on Memorial Day was like a legacy series, so it's like you and a youth. So I took my nephew. But the next weekend was like the Berkeley series, like it's the real deal. So, I'm kind of using Memorial Day as practice for that too. But so I end up going that next Saturday, or let me rewind. We have to use my fishing partner's boat because my shaft, they hadn't got the new one in from Garmin yet. So my boat was out of commission. And so we used my fishing partner's boat, and I mean, he made me drive and everything. He gave me full command of the boat, basically. Mm-hmm. But I was using it's like shooting somebody else's gun almost.
Right.
It's just, you're a little uncomfortable.
Sure.
Being in it, just because it's not your norm.
Right.
And you don't want to mess something up, like you
driving somebody else's truck.
Yeah. It's just a little weird, but a little awkward, I guess. But anyway, so Friday we go to practice. Friday, I take Friday off work, like gonna go practice. Angler of the year still on the line, like it's a tight race. And so we go practice, and by 11 o'clock I have to go. Like, I feel terrible. Like I can barely stand. It's awful. And so I have a terrible headache. I feel like I could throw up. And so we we leave at like 11, and I'm like, well, I know Millers Ferry well enough. I can probably make something happen tomorrow. And so I come back and I sleep for like 3 hours that afternoon and feel a little bit better. Well, before I went to sleep, I took my temp. It was like 104. Or no, after I woke up, it was like 100, not 100.8 is what it was, not 104. Later it was 100.4, but it was 100.8 when I woke up from my nap. And then I called a local, I don't know, clinic or whatever. It was like an hour and a half or something before they closed. And it was on a Friday. So they were like, well, I don't think we can take a new patient. I'm like, really? I feel terrible. I really need something. But anyway, so I just had to tough it out. And the next morning, tournament morning, I woke up. I still had a little bit of a fever, but it was like 99.8. And I was like, I'm making this happen. I'm going. Whether I may have to sit down at some point, but I'm going.
It's a long day.
So I went out there, and I didn't feel great. But, we fished the tournament, and, I mean, that was no excuse. Even if I'd have felt good, we probably wouldn't have done anything better than what we did in the end. But we didn't even cut a check or anything. I think we finished like, I don't know, we finished top 10, but it still wasn't what I was expecting or what I expected of myself, I guess. But it kind of hurt us in Angler of the Year. Like, it basically made it to where the last tournament we have to win and the others have to mess up kind of deal. But anyway, so after that tournament, like, we've pretty much messed up Angler of the Year. I've been sick. My trolling motor's busted. And, like, on the way that Saturday morning, on the way to the ramp, like, normally I'll say, like, while I'm driving, my eyes aren't closed, but my eyes are open, but like I say a prayer like on the way.
Sure.
And generally I say in my prayer, I'll say something in regards to like, regardless of the results today, regardless of what happens, basically, I'll praise you one way or another. Right. Good or bad, whatever happens kind of deal. And so, like, when I'm leaving the weigh-in, like, I'm finding myself, like, in a little bit of, like, self-pity almost. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like I said, all that stuff I've done got sick. My trolling motor's gone. Like, terrible finish. Like, I feel terrible. And, like.
Low down.
Yeah, man. Like, in the dumps, not grateful for anything. And it kind of like, it hit me at that point. Sometimes the Holy Spirit just kind of talks to you and humbles you.
Tunes you up a little bit.
Yeah, when you're in need. So it's like the Holy Spirit kind of spoke to me. He's like, who are you to not be grateful? Mm-hmm. Like, you went fishing today. You know what I'm saying? Like, you have the opportunity to do this. Like, you have the opportunity to go fish. And, you're free to go do that. You have the opportunity to drive this truck you're in, it was in my car, but like you have the opportunity to drive a vehicle. Like, you have a truck, you have a boat, like you have all these things and all this opportunity to go fish, and you're not grateful. Like, who are you to question, who are you to question God or, and I wasn't saying I was questioning God necessarily, but like,
you kind of taking for granted.
Like, what's going on here? Why is all this, bad things happening?
Why me?
Yeah. Why can't I do good? Why can't things just start going but good for me? But yeah, I was kind of humbled in that moment. I felt real down after for different reasons after that, you know.
Yeah. Perspective is a hard thing to gain sometimes, or the right perspective anyway. Yep. I think everybody can probably relate to that a little bit. We're all kind of spoiled at some point.
Well, it's easy to praise him when you win Angler of the Year or when you win a tournament. But it's much harder to praise him when you just, got your eyes beat in or, you sick and throwing up. Like, it's hard to do at that point. For me, at least. I don't know if that's true for everybody, but.
Yeah, well, at least you gained that through it. Yeah. If nothing else, you learned a little. He taught you something there.
Yep. Always learning. So, well, enough about me. So, how was the turkey hunting this year? I didn't even get to go, by the way.
Yeah, well, I would like to say you didn't miss anything, but I mean, turkey season. So that was the last time we had a podcast. It was Evan Mosley, and we were just about to kick off turkey season, and it's come and gone now. I only killed one this year, which is, I say only. I'm grateful for killing one. It's not like I'm a great turkey hunter. I'm a turkey hunter, but I'm not one is good for me. But I killed him on opening day, so that made it a little bit tougher because, you know, if you kill one and it's on opening day, it's a pretty long season after that. But he was just read the script. I killed him at like 6:41 on opening day, and that's kind of
Setting
before
the tone there.
yeah, I mean, it was just right off the bat. He flew right down to my barrel, and you know, he had like right at an inch spurs and 10-inch beard, just your typical 2-year-old turkey. That was just a great. I mean, couldn't be any higher on the mountain than opening day. Just perfect, you know. And the next day, that was on. Yeah, I don't know. Well, the next time I went, anyway. I heard a bird gobbling and went to him and set up. He was still on the limb gobbling, and he's responding to my little tree yelps, and everything's going just like it's supposed to. Well, I'm right next to a cotton field, and I figure he's going to fly down the cotton field because that's what they do. And so in between me and where I'm thinking he'll fly down, there's a downed white oak, big white oak, and the root ball still attached, and it's, you know how it is. The root ball be sticking up.
Mm-hmm.
I said, all right, he's either going to fly down, and he's either going to go around the right side of the white oak to me or the left. And the left would have been the top of the tree. And so it was a lot more to walk around or whatever. So I'm thinking, all right, I'm setting up for him coming around the root ball. And I'm left-handed. So the right of the tree, I'm left-handed. Kind of sets up well, you know, I'm facing, but at that point I'm sold out to the right because I'm left-handed. Yep. So if he comes into the left, I'm in trouble. And of course, he goes radio silent when he hits the ground. 20 minutes later, he comes bobbing in from my left, and all I can do is side-eye him a little bit. And he knew when he didn't see what he was looking for, he turned and ran. And then had a couple more encounters, nothing close or whatever. Birds gobbling. I had a good year as far as hearing birds, which is always encouraging for me. I hate to wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and not hear one gobble, but and then right there towards the end of the season, I was walking down a road where I know there was a turkey in the area, and usually, historically, they roost on the back end of this food plot, and so I wasn't even checking up in the dark. I was going straight to the food plot, trying to get there before the sun rises, you know, and I get to where I can see the opening of the food plot, like on the skyline, you know, you see where the trees, you can see open behind them. So I stopped and I pulled my mask on, and like while I have my mask like right above my eyes pulling down, he gobbled, and he was 50 yards from me, like right over my head. And I'm in the middle of like this white sandy road, and luckily I guess there's enough canopy between me and him, he couldn't see me. So he just gobbled on his own, and I'd slink down into, there was a turnout where they, you know, the dozer pushes a turnout for water to run off the road. There was no tree, but there was a kind of a high bank of the turnout that I got up against, and just kind of tried to bury myself in there. And he just, man, for probably the next 20 minutes, just gobbling his head off. I didn't owl or nothing. He's just gobbling. And finally he settled down a little bit, and I just barely yelped, and he gobbled. And I'm like, okay, this is done deal. I don't know how he didn't see me, but he didn't. And he thinks I'm a hen that he's called to him. This is fitting to work. And so I get my gun up and everything's ready. And I'd already set my call down because I figured I was done with that. Mm-hmm. But a hen comes up the road.
Slate?
Yeah.
Slate
yeah. Mm-hmm. And a hen comes up the road. I never heard her fly down. I don't know where she was roosted, but she comes walking up the road, and she gets 10 yards from me in the middle of the road. And the only two yelps, it was just like the gnarliest, worst turkey call you've ever heard, but it was just like just that. It was all, and he got fired up again, man. He was like, and then he flew down, and he's like gobbling while he flies down. Like he knew he heard me, but he was waiting on her. Mm-hmm. It was anyway. So, but he flies down right. He flew down just past my lane. So there's a bush between me and him to my right. And he's strutting and gobbling in the middle of the road, and she's just pecking around. They're just doing turkey things, right? But he's already in range, but there's a bush. And turkeys, they do this thing when they're strutting in the road. They'll walk a little ways and bow up and strut, and they'll turn a circle, and then they'll walk back the way they came from. And then they do that dance. And each time they come a little bit further up the road, and any turkey hunter knows what I'm talking about. They come a little further up the road, and then they turn around and go back, and then they come. Well, finally, he comes up enough, I just can't take it anymore. I got a red dot scope, and I'm just burning it in his head, you know. And I made a rookie mistake, and I know this, and I know I shouldn't have done this. He come past the bush, but he's in strut, and you never shoot a turkey when he's strutting, because it just, when they strut, their head goes back into their body, and it really changes what you're hitting. But I couldn't take it anymore, and I had to bead. I could see his white. I mean, it's still gray light, you know. It was still real early, but I could see his white head through my red dot, and I put it on him, and he cut a backflip. And, you know, I pulled my mask off. I'm just like, because he's flopping, he's done, you know. I get up and walk over there to him. And when he was flopping, he had flopped his way back behind the bush again. But I could still see him flopping and still hear him flopping. So he's dead. I mean, he's doing dead turkey stuff. I get over there around the bush, and when I get around the bush, he's still laid out, like his wings are spread, and he's like not in a posture of like alertness, but his head's up. And that's not, I was like, why is I didn't get it. And I was like, that's not right. And by the time it hit me, you know, he's up and gone. I mean, I couldn't even, my gun's still loaded because it's an automatic, you know, it's already racked another shell. My red dot was still on. All I could do is just stand there dumbfounded watching this turkey get up. And I was just like, what? You know, so about that time, I take off running. I'm talking about full sprint after this turkey, and I had apparently broke his wing so he couldn't fly. And I'm chasing for like 300 yards. I chased this turkey through the woods, and he's just fast enough to stay ahead of me. Every now and then I would see a lane, and I'd stop and try to get on him to shoot. But like by the time your mind processes to shoot, you know, the lane's gone because he's moving, you know. Man, I strode turkey calls, and I lost my hat that day running through the woods. I had to go back and find all my calls and my thermocell, all this stuff through the woods after I finally give up chasing him.
Got a trail of, let's say breadcrumbs, but
well,
turkey hunting stuff.
Well, after I got done chasing him, I turned around and I was like, I didn't even know where I was. I didn't know what direction I had ran. I didn't know where I'd came from. So I was defeated, and I had to go back and look for the next hour for the rest of my stuff before I could go try to hunt another turkey. And anyway, so that was the last one. It was a pretty bad ordeal. I say I killed 2, but I only recovered 1 because that turkey died. He was unfortunately, he was coyote food. As a matter of fact, I texted Evan Mosley. Evan, if you're listening, this is the kind of friend you are. I texted Evan that morning after I happened. I told him the story, and he's like, yeah, and the worst thing about it is that turkey's dead somewhere. And I was just like, gee, thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Kind of when you gut shot a big buck.
Yeah. So that was hard. But my dad didn't kill a turkey on our place this year. No, I was the only one that killed on our place. So kind of a down year for our group. But nonetheless, turkey season, I'm a deer hunter. I like the turkey hunt. I won't say I love it. So I'm kind of, by the time turkey season's over, I think even people that love turkey hunting will tell you by the time it's over with, you're just wore slap out. And that's the way I feel now, especially as long as deer season goes. Like you get out of deer season, and within a month you're back to turkey season. And my wife doesn't turkey hunt, so like her patience gets wore out too, you know, Erica's, by the time turkey season's over with, she's tired of me being gone on Saturdays, and it's just like it's like the official closing of the 24 hunting season when turkey season's over. Well, I mean, I guess it is literally, but also it just feels like, all right, we're going to catch a breath now. We're going to go take the pontoon boat out and do just some relaxing stuff, but that has not been the case, man. We have been so dang busy. Cooper played T-ball. First year T-ball this year, and that I helped coach, and it was just it was a lot. It was a lot. I don't think I'm cut out to be a park ball coach.
T-ball
especially T-ball, but we'll see. He seemed to like it, so I imagine we'll be back again. I'm not doing fall ball. I'm not doing all-stars. At least that's where I stand right now. He may change my mind about it, but anyway. I kind of got us off subject there, but turkey season was good. I know, you know, speaking of Evan, he had a very successful season again. He didn't get another Grand Slam or anything, but he killed a bunch of birds, and
I've been seeing some of his mounts. He's been posting.
Yep. But anyway, just we're focusing now. I'm kind of turning slowly starting. I shot my bow again for the first time yesterday. First time since February. Pulled the bow out, kind of turning my thoughts towards bear hunting again in September. It's getting That's the next thing up, and I'm ready for it. Oh, I did want to mention that I also found myself to be a fisherman in a stock pond with our buddy Jonathan Rachel that moved up to Gadsden, Alabama, where he's living now. He's got a stock pond in his backyard, and I went and visited him last weekend and just caught some 3-4 pound fish, just as many of them as you wanted to right out of the pond, which is always a good time. I mean, you can't beat a stock pond.
No, I need to, after the spring I've had, I need to go
Yeah, you need to go up there.
Use that to get my confidence up.
Has he sent you any pictures since he got a scale now? He finally went and bought him a scale.
He did?
Yeah, so now he's knowing what they really weigh. So
he's been sending me some to guess and telling what I think. It's hard to tell by a picture,
Right.
I generally try to look at the mouth versus hand ratio.
Well, he went and got him. He went and got him a little scale now, and I think the biggest one he's caught since he's got the scale was like 7.5 or 7.6 or something like that. So, I mean, just awesome for your backyard. Yeah. Couldn't do anything, and like he didn't have to work for them. They were already there.
Right.
No offense, Jonathan, but anyway,
I need to go get my confidence up there.
Yep. You could probably catch him on the big one on the wacky rig there. I bet.
I have done that. Like went to private lakes or ponds to like fish a lure that you want to get some confidence in. Yeah.
I'll say just real quick. I don't want to talk more about this, but I'm not. I bass fish in ponds, and I have bass fished my whole life recreationally, not tournament. I'm not that serious about it. But so I'm fishing in Jonathan's pond or lake, whatever you want to call it, in his backyard. And most of the fish he has been catching has been on the banks with trees hanging over them. And the way it is, like the right side of his backyard, it kind of runs up into a ditch or slough kind of area. So it gets some weeds and grass. And then there's a bunch of logs and stuff, deadfalls into it. And that's where he's been catching most of the fish. Well, over to the left, he shares that side with another yard, and it's real manicured. There's nothing on the pond bank. But there's a drain that comes off the road system into the pond right there. Well, as much as it's been raining, I look over there and there's just, a lot of water coming through the pipe into the pond. And I was like, in theory,
they're going to be there.
There's stuff coming out of there. They're feeding on whatever's coming out of there. And I went over there. It was raining. And I went over there and like every cast.
Oh yeah.
Just big fish every time.
Yep.
They'd hit it and run straight to deep water with it, just strip and drag, and I was like, man, if all fishing was like this, I'd be a fisherman. Mm-hmm. I'd give up hunting for this. So that was cool. I felt, my point was I felt really good about my tactic there. I was like,
oh yeah,
this is something.
Any kind of moving water, especially in a body that doesn't normally have moving water. Yeah, it'll fire them up. I know we have the pond I grew up fishing there at our house. It's got a culvert in the upper end of it, and so the culvert's just it's one of those little branches that just there's hardly any water in it generally until it rains. But when it rains, especially a lot, there's a good bit of water pouring through there. When you got a big rain and there was water just gushing through that pipe, you could go right there and wear them out.
Freaking just
whatever you
washing
throw in
bugs or worms or whatever down in there. That's what they're waiting on.
Ditch. Okay. A lot of times, it'll wash that crawfish out of that ditch and stuff. And they'll be there waiting on them crawfish and smoke them.
Last thing about the fish in the pond, but it's a catch and release pond only. Like every fish that they want you to throw it back in this pond,
and somehow they would want you to keep
but somehow it's sustaining quality fish. And one fish, most of them they all look healthy. It's wild.
The only way to do that really is to keep. You have to put forage in.
Yeah, well, maybe it does. Maybe there's something in there.
They're probably stocking it with some kind of bait fish, or
you still think even eventually it would get out of whack. But anyway, because it's not huge.
Yeah.
We're talking like 7-8 acres, probably something like that. But
anyway,
let's move towards the devotion so we can start to wrap this thing up. But we're going to do a quick devotion, so let's do that. All right. So our devotion tonight, we're going to title it "Honorable Service." We're going to be in 2 Timothy chapter 2, and really what brings this to me and to my heart is what's been going on in our church for the last 6 months or so. Personally, in mine and Will's life, Will back in January was ordained as a deacon, and then a couple of months after that, our pastor of 25 years retired, and I was nominated for the pastor search committee. And So when me and Will say we've been busy and things have been busy, we've been involved in a lot of things of the church. Will obviously being on the deacon body and not having a pastor currently, he's involved in a lot of things happening there, and I'm on the search committee, and we're meeting every week and going over resumes and all this stuff. And that on top of life itself, there's just a lot going on, and a lot of times that can be overwhelming to us. And we get kind of caught up in life and thinking about all the things we already have going on, that our service to the Lord sometimes feels like a hindrance, or maybe just an inconvenience is a better way to say it. And this was encouragement to me, and a reminder to me that it's not this service that I've been called to is not something that I do out of just because I think it ought to be done or it's the right thing to do. It's a calling, and it's a charge, and it's ordained also. It's more so, I know I said Will was ordained into a deacon. That was ordained by men, but I think God designs us to have a role for service. So we're going to look at Scripture. We're in 2 Timothy chapter 2. This is a letter that Paul wrote to Timothy after he has already kind of established Timothy as a leader of this body of believers that he's with now. Still didn't check to see if Paul was in prison when he wrote it, but I believe Paul was in prison when he wrote this to Timothy. So he's giving Timothy instructions and some encouragement of how to lead this group of people. So we're going to start 2 Timothy chapter 2, starting in verse 20. Now in a large house there are not only gold and silver vessels, but also vessels of wood and earthenware, and some to honor and some to dishonor. Therefore, if anyone cleanses himself from these things, he will be a vessel for honor, sanctified, useful to the master, prepared for every good work. Now flee from youthful lust and pursue righteousness, faith, and love and peace with those who call on the Lord for a pure heart. So the picture that Paul is using here, he's drawing this picture out of a large house, and inside this house there's a bunch of different, he says, vessels. That word vessels in Greek is skios, and skios is literally translated to household utensils. So we're talking about plates and forks and knives and cups and stuff of that nature, So that's the picture. There's this big house, and inside of it, there's all kind of utensils to get used for various tasks or whatever. So, and looking deeper into that, obviously the house is the body of believers, the Church of Christ, or whether it's local or as a whole. In this case, we're going to look at it as this local body of believers. And then all the, quote, vessels inside of it, these utensils, are you and I. And as Paul goes on to say, those vessels, some are called to an honorable service and some to a dishonorable service. And I think Paul is challenging us to be the vessels that are prepared to be used, or the utensils that are prepared to be used for this honorable service. I think the difference here is be the members of the body, or what Paul is trying to tell Timothy and trying to get Timothy to relate to this body of believers, is to be members of the body that are prepared for this honorable service. Don't, for, I guess a more modern term than what Paul would have used, is don't be a pew filler, right? So when I think about our church, and we're lacking a pastor, our student minister has moved to a different church here in the last couple months. There's a lot of positions that are empty and people from our church. Bayou Sierra is doing an exceptional job of stepping up and filling these roles, and I'm very encouraged by that. But I think over time, a lot of us are gonna grow weary of that, and this was the encouragement I needed, and I hopefully it'll touch some of y'all too. So Paul calls us to be those utensils, those members of the body, to be selected for honorable service, and he gives us instructions how to get there too. So he kind of lists three qualities of that useful servant, or that useful vessel, he calls it. He says we'll be a vessel for honor, we'll be sanctified, we'll be useful to the master, and prepared for every good work. I think another translation, maybe I think it's the English Standard Version, says instead of sanctified, I think it says set apart for holy, which may be a little better way to go here with that. But let's just look at those things. So you have this honorable service, and what it looks like. It's, say, sanctified or set apart for holy. So I'm going to use a bunch of analogies here to try to relate this to it. And they're, I'll just go ahead and apologize in advance because they're kind of corny, but that's the way I like to learn. So we think about set apart for holy. I think holy, a lot of times we say the definition of holy is set apart, but when we really get into it, what does holy actually mean? It's not just set apart, but it's set apart in such a way, like we strive to be holy, and we know that God's standard is holy, and it's more than set apart. It's a standard that we strive for, and it's a standard set by God. So we look at that, and I want to think about your grandma's. My grandmother, I don't know about yours, Will, but if you go in my grandmother's house, she has a sitting room. Your grandma ever have a sitting room? Just it wasn't the TV room. I'm not talking about that.
Yeah, both grandmothers had there was I guess I'm trying to remember, like a living room and a den, so to speak.
Yeah.
Like the living room's where you watch TV, and the den is where you go talk, I guess. There's no TV, like you said.
We were never allowed in the sitting room as kids at my grandmother's house, because in there was these china cabinets and little figurines set out on, glass figurines everywhere or whatever. But in the china cabinet, there was all these dishes and stuff that I had never seen used in my entire life. And now I think, I don't think they've still been used to this day. They're in boxes now, I'm sure. But so they were, for all purposes here, those dishes were set apart. They were considered, I guess, for our sake here, holy, right? They're set apart. They were only for some special occasion that we never saw happen, but nonetheless. And also, I think me and Erica have, I don't know why, but when you get married, you get these people give you crystal dishes. Did y'all get crystal dishes?
I don't remember.
Maybe that's just my family thing.
We might have, but I don't remember.
We got some like crystal glasses and little serving dishes and stuff, and they're like up in the cabinet. We'll never use them.
Maybe we got some and we don't use them. Maybe that's what.
Yeah. Anyway, it's because they're set apart. Like you can't imagine the occasion that you would use this. So that's what we look at as set apart. They have a purpose, but that purpose is very defined, and that's what God has for us. The purpose that God has for us, when we look at roles that he puts in front of us and opportunities to serve, we are especially designed for that purpose. And when God gives us opportunities to serve in the local body, he has designed you, he has purposed you for that role. Now, I ain't saying you can't pick the wrong one. I think there's been plenty of people that have seen a chance and an opportunity to serve in church, and it was like square peg in a round hole, or round peg in a square hole, however that goes, right? You may not always get the right one, but I can promise you that God has designed you for that special role. All right. So the next thing he says, once we moved on from sanctified or set apart for holy, we see useful to the master. So in that role, that purpose, it's kind of a part B to that, right? God has designed you to fill a need in the body of Christ. He has given you these gifts and personality and traits and whatever. He's given you all those things to make you fit that role. So you're useful to the master in the way you are designed, right? You don't, if you're having people over for a steak dinner, you don't pass them out butter knives to cut their steak, right? Because that's not useful, right? We're going to give them a steak knife. Another thing, like you think about, we may have those crystal dishes and stuff in the house, or we may have whatever, the crystal stuff's nice, but my most useful tool being is I like to smoke meats and stuff. I have this like 2 foot long butcher knife, and it's old, and the blade is like dented up and chipped pretty good, but I keep it sharp and I keep it rubbed down with oil so it doesn't rust and all. And like, it's my go-to chopping knife for whatever, that thing is very useful to me. It doesn't look beautiful. It doesn't look like the best utensil I have in my house by far, but it is the most useful to me because it's what I need for whatever task I have, and it's the same with us in the body. We may not look like the pastor, we may not look like a youth minister, we may not look like a teacher, even a Sunday school teacher, or whatever role it is. You may not think you look that way, but you are most likely the most useful to God in that position. All right, and then so we're sanctified or set apart for holy. We're useful to the master, or we're prepared for every good work. There's a lot of things that go into being prepared for every good work. Again, in verse 22, when I get to it in a minute, Paul's going to give us a little bit of a blueprint for that, but I couldn't help but think about ready for every good work or prepared for every good work, to think about just being ready to make it happen, a good team player, right? And as much as I dislike Bryce Harper, he came to my mind when I was thinking about this. So several years ago, if y'all don't know who Bryce Harper is, he's a professional baseball player for the Philadelphia Phillies. And in his first couple of years with the Phillies, he was playing right field, and he was just an all-star caliber outfielder. He was MVP a couple times, and he's really, as much as I dislike him, he's a really good baseball player. Okay. Well, Bryce Harper messed up his elbow and had to have Tommy John surgery. And what that meant for his career as an outfielder was he couldn't throw as hard as he used to could. So his elbow's messed up, but Bryce Harper's attitude, his preparedness for every good work, right? He tells the team, hey, I can't play outfield anymore, but I'm willing to swap to first base so I don't have to throw the ball as far. I want to be a part of this team, and I want to contribute. So he knows that he's not the greatest first baseman, and probably Philadelphia knows he's not the greatest first baseman either, but you can't deny the fact that he's willing to do anything for his team. He was willing to make it happen, so he comes to first base as a whole. He's willing to relearn a position and has really done a good job at it. But anyway, so Bryce Harper was prepared to do whatever it took for his team, prepared to do whatever good work he needed to do. And I think similarly, we need to have that attitude that whatever we're called to do, although we may not be comfortable with it, we may not think it's our best fit, we may not have ever done it before. When we see this calling in our life, we can't ignore it. We gotta think about the rest of whether it's your local church or the body of the Church of Christ in a whole, right? We gotta think about that and be prepared to step into that and do it all for God's glory, but also for other people are dependent on us to do our part. So there was one thing I skipped over here in verse 21 that is a big aspect of what really qualifies you for honorable service. We've talked about, being set apart for holy qualifies you for honorable service, being useful to the master, and we got to make sure we're prepared for every good work. But we skipped over the very first one in verse 21. I kind of did that on purpose, but it's cleanliness, right? It says in verse 24, therefore, if anyone cleanses himself from these things, and these things he's talked about, he's referring to some stuff he's already told Timothy before, and then he's going to kind of refer to what comes in verse 22, but let's just look at cleanliness. So obviously, I don't think this one's a very hard analogy to connect here, but if we're talking about dishes and utensils, right? If you're having a dinner party, you're not going to serve your guest on dirty dishes, right? Dirty dishes are not honorable, not ready for honorable service. So your usefulness to God, your usefulness to the church is directly connected to your cleanliness. And I think that goes without saying that we're talking about sin in your life. I think people can be put in roles in the church and certainly have a lot of stuff that people don't know about going on. But I don't think their ministry in that position will be fruitful. I think it will always be brought to light. So I think it's important for us to know if we're gonna take the step. And Will, I know you've been through this with deaconship, and I know I certainly had to make sure I was in the right place to do the pastor search committee stuff. You have to really examine your life and make sure you have everything in order, because service to God, service in the body of Christ is not volunteer. It's not something you're paid for. It ain't, it's not a worldly thing. What we're talking about here is kingdom work. It's way more important than anything else going on, and it's way more serious. So we have to be engaged in that sanctification process. We have to be aware of our sin and working hard to get over it, to deal with it, to not be bound to it, and be aware of that. So, all right, let's look at verse 22. So these are the directions really of how to get there, I guess you can see. Verse 22 says, "Now flee from youthful lust and pursue righteousness, faith, love, peace with those who call on the Lord of a pure heart." So there's some directions here how to get there. First off, you'll notice that it says youthful lust, and I think that's kind of comical. Not comical. I don't know I like to have this kind of imagination of Timothy and Paul's relationship. Like at this point, I've heard people say that Timothy was like 40, and but Paul maybe still talking to him like he's a kid. But in reality, what Paul is referring to here, youthful lust, I think a lot of times our mind will, just reading lust, will automatically go to like sexual stuff. But really what Paul's saying, this youthful lust, is like this driven desire just to put yourself first always, right? Will, you got a kid, I got kids. I think everybody who has kids knows that kids always want to be top priority, whatever we're doing. It's all about me, whatever. If I'm not happy, make me happy. I'm hungry, feed me, whatever. That's the youthful lusts that Paul's talking about here. He's just talking about get over yourself, recognize that you are not top priority here. Be willing to put other people before you, be willing to be uncomfortable, be willing to get out of your comfort zone and do whatever you're called to do. And of course, pursue righteousness. Righteousness, we got there's kind of you could break these down, like flee is running from. So we're running from youthful lust. Pursue is to run to righteousness, right? And righteousness is God's standard, not ours. You can't get caught up in, and when we say righteousness, you can't look at what you've done, and maybe you have been in this role of service for an extended period of time, and people say you're doing a great job. Don't get caught up in that. What you're doing is striving towards what God's called you to do, and we're striving towards God's righteousness, not ours. But we strive for righteousness, faith, love, and peace. And then the third, we run from youthful lust, we run to righteousness, faith, and love, and we run with those who are called on the Lord for a pure heart. So we have to make sure we're surrounded by people that are going to uplift us. We have to have some kind of support group or some kind of accountability or however you want to call it, or whatever you want to call it. We have to have support. And I think that's really, Bayou Sara does it really, really well. I know we have great deacons, and we got a lot of great men who are stepping up in the church. I can't speak for Will himself, but I know the men that you're surrounded by in that group, and I know that they are, how do I say, like uplifting you and showing you the way and helping you out in that. And also they are stepping up in this kind of administration role without having a pastor now. With our student ministry, I've seen this group of people come together. Some are parents of students here, and some are not. Some are college kids, some are young adults, and we're all coming together and just putting together a plan, like how are we going to go forward, and everybody's working together, and somehow we're fine. Like we don't have the administration we need to really make it all work, but it's working. It's awesome. We're doing great, and that's because things are being done the right way. We're running from, or at least I can hope to say this about everybody, we're fleeing from these youthful lust of being number one, and being top priority. We're running to righteousness, faith, love, and peace, and we're running with people who are like-minded. So when we think about this daunting task of service, however it looks for you, don't be scared of it. Be honored by it. I think that's the biggest takeaway that I could get is not look at it as, oh man, I got to go do this. It's like kind of Will always talked about it earlier. It's man, I'm so honored to have the opportunity to be able to do this for God's kingdom, for God's church. I'm honored to be selected to be this person. So, are we ready to be called to honorable service? I hope we are. It's a call that God has for every member of the body of Christ is called to service in some way or another, and I think that's important for us to know.
Yeah, I think I think it starts with leadership. Really, you was talking about the church. We hadn't really missed a beat, even though we've lost some of our leaders in the last few months. A lot of people stepped up, and it's kind of been encouraging to see just how many people stepped up in all aspects, whether it's youth or children or college and career or just the adult congregation. Just a lot of people step up. It's encouraging to me because, as a body of believers, you see one of your brothers or sisters step up and do something. It's like, I need to step up and do something too, and, but yeah, the next thing is not just stepping into the gap, that's needed. But the second thing is doing it joyfully. And that don't mean that you necessarily have to love what you're doing. You can still do it joyfully, even if you might not have chosen to be in the position you're in currently. You can still do it with joy, and serve joyfully. Because really, if you're doing something that's serving the Lord and you're not doing it joyfully, you may need to kind of reevaluate that and think about that a little bit. Because anything that we do for the Lord, we should do it joyfully. Because there's rewards in heaven for that kind of thing, first off. Right. But, secondly, anything that we're doing that can bring glory to Him is, that's what it's all about. That's what life is about, so yep. Just serve with joy.
Yeah, I think it's, I know I can't recall doing it, but I know I've spoken multiple times about purpose and just living in that, and when if you look at service or whatever role that is for you in the church, you look at service as fulfilling whatever God's purpose was for you being a member of that church. So, it's the way you got to look at it, is that you're fulfilling the purpose that God has for you for you to be in that body of believers. And, you got to be joyful about that, because that's obedience, right? That's good for you. It's good. God's happy with it. And like you said, I guess the motive there is eternal rewards, and I kind of meant to bring that up and left it out, but yeah, one day you will get the well done, good and faithful servant.
Yeah, there's been times that I've been asked to do stuff, and in my head, just wheel in my head's I don't really want to do that, mm-hmm. but I know it needs to be done, and I'm like, yeah, man, I'll do it, mm-hmm. and I do it with joy, because I know it, it needs to be done, and to fulfill His purpose. So, I do it joyfully, but in my head, I'm like, yeah, I would rather not, but I will, and sometimes we have to do those things that we don't necessarily want to do. Because if you don't step out of that comfort zone, because that's what it is, it's just your comfort zone. Yep. So if you never step out of that comfort zone, then you're never really going to move forward. So
and if you can't think about, elsewhere in one of Paul's letters, he talks about the fingers and all the body of Christ, how it's all dependent on each other. I think he also uses the analogy of bricks in a wall. And so if you're not here doing what God's called you to do, then there's a hole in the wall and it ain't working like it's supposed to. Mm-hmm. So you got to think about the other people. Somebody is always dependent on you on Sundays. You may just be a congregation member, but without you, there's nobody to preach to, or without you, there's nobody to sing worship from the congregation. So everybody that is a member of a body of believers has a purpose and has a spot for service, whether you really do anything or not. And if we start thinking about church as I'll say an obligation to other people, and not just something for us. Don't come to church just to see what you can get out of it. Go to church to see what you can give to it, right?
Yep.
And I think I don't think I'm wrong in saying that. I think that's the way it should be. I think we should think about other people, and if we're not there, we're hindering their worship, or we're hindering the way that church was supposed to work.
Yep.
And that was extra.
Yeah, I Googled while you were giving the devotion, and 2 Timothy was written by Paul in prison
Yeah.
in Rome. So
Okay, I was right.
you're correct. First Timothy was not. He was not in prison. But yeah, second.
Yeah, I knew
Timothy.
that.
Second Timothy was.
I knew that.
Okay. Right before his death, actually.
Yeah.
Also, is a Dixie plate honorable or dishonorable? Like a paper plate, you know?
I'd say scenario
South, I would
dependent.
say honorable.
Scenario dependent. I mean,
Barbecue, maybe.
yeah, I mean, it depends on how many people are there.
Yeah.
If it's just like you at home eating off a Dixie plate, I think it's kind of dishonorable. Like
But if you serve, what if it's the fancy ones you put steak on, you know?
the extra heavy, the heavy duty ones that don't break.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I think if you're sitting at home and all you got to eat off of is a Dixie plate, maybe you
That's
don't.
very common for our household. There's a lot of Dixie plates.
No, that's by choice. That's by choice. Anyway, all right, we're gonna wrap it up. We appreciate y'all listening, and hopefully we can get back to doing some more topical episodes. And we got some things coming, so just stick with us. And appreciate y'all listening.
Yep. Thank you, guys. And see you next time.